My brother laughed at my rusty truck for years until he discovered I was the CEO of the company. He was begging to join. If you had asked my parents which of their two sons was destined to succeed, they wouldn't have hesitated for a second. Ryan, they would have said. Always Ryan. Never me. My name is Ethan Carter, and for most of my life, I was the invisible son. Ryan was 3 years older than me, and from the day he was born, it felt like the universe bent around him. He was charming, athletic, funny. The kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. People loved Ryan. Teachers loved Ryan. Neighbors loved Ryan. My parents practically worshipped Ryan. And me? I was the quiet kid. The kid who preferred taking apart lawnmowers in the garage instead of playing football. The kid who spent weekends rebuilding engines instead of going to parties. The kid who never quite fit the image my parents wanted. I learned early that accomplishments didn't matter if you weren't the favorite. When I was 12 years old, I won first place in a statewide science competition. 300 students participated. I spent 6 months building a working hydraulic lifting system from scrap materials. The judges loved it. My teacher cried when I won. I came home carrying the trophy. My mother glanced at it. That's nice, sweetheart. Then she returned to helping Ryan prepare for a football game. That was it. No celebration. No congratulations. No family dinner. Nothing. 3 weeks later, Ryan scored the winning touchdown in a regional game. My parents threw a party. A giant party. Neighbors came. Relatives came. There were banners, cakes, photos, speeches. I remember standing in the corner holding a paper plate while everyone congratulated Ryan. Nobody even remembered my science competition. That night, I learned a lesson that stayed with me for years. In my family, effort didn't matter. Only attention did. And Ryan always had it. When Ryan turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new red Mustang. Dad handed him the keys with tears in his eyes. Mom took photos from every angle. Ryan drove around the neighborhood honking the horn while everyone cheered. When I turned 16 2 years later, my father gave me an old toolbox. Not a truck. Not a car. A toolbox. The box itself was older than I was. Dad slapped my shoulder. Learn a useful skill. I smiled and thanked him, then spent the next 2 years repairing vehicles for neighbors after school. Ironically, that toolbox ended up becoming one of the most valuable gifts I ever received. Because unlike Ryan, nobody was handing me opportunities. I had to build my own. By the time I graduated high school, Ryan had already dropped out of community college. My parents blamed the professors, the curriculum, the economy. Bad luck. Everyone except Ryan. Meanwhile, I earned a scholarship to study mechanical engineering. My parents barely attended the ceremony. Mom said she had a headache. Dad said he was busy helping Ryan move into a new apartment. I sat alone after graduation. Watching families take photos together. Watching proud parents hug their children. I told myself it didn't hurt. But it did. More than I wanted to admit. College wasn't easy. I worked nights. Studied during weekends. Took every internship I could find. While Ryan jumped from one career idea to another. Real estate. Insurance. Cryptocurrency. Online marketing. Sales. Every few months he discovered a new dream. Every few months it failed. And every time it failed, my parents rescued him. Paid his rent, covered his debts. Bought him another car, gave him another chance. At 27, Ryan was still living like a teenager. At 24, I was already leading engineering projects. Yet somehow, Ryan remained the family's future success story. I stopped trying to understand it. Instead, I focused on building something for myself. A few years later, I purchased a truck. Actually, calling it a truck was generous. It looked like something rescued from a scrapyard. The paint was faded, the rear bumper was dented, rust covered parts of the body. Most people would have avoided it. I loved it immediately. Because underneath the ugly exterior was a powerful engine and a solid frame. The previous owner wanted almost nothing for it. I bought it, then spent evenings and weekends restoring it. Not because I couldn't afford better. Because I enjoyed it. Working on that truck reminded me why I became an engineer. It reminded me that value isn't always visible. Ryan hated that truck. Absolutely hated it. Every family gathering turned into another comedy show. "Hey Ethan," he'd yell. "Did your truck survive the drive here?" Everyone laughed. Or, "Careful parking near the house. The rust might spread." More laughter. My parents never defended me. They laughed too. At first, I laughed along. Eventually, I stopped. Not because the jokes hurt. Because they became predictable. The funny thing was that while Ryan mocked my truck, he had no idea what was happening in my life. Nobody did. 5 years earlier, I'd noticed a massive problem in industrial manufacturing. Factories were losing millions because maintenance systems were outdated and inefficient. The software available was terrible, so I built my own. At first it was a side project. Then it became a startup. Then investors arrived. Then customers arrived. Then everything exploded. Within 4 years, the company grew faster than I ever imagined. We signed contracts across multiple states. Revenue doubled. Then tripled. Then doubled again. Eventually, I became CEO. Then a millionaire. Then much more than that. I never told my family. Not because I wanted to hide it. Because I didn't care anymore. Success wasn't something I needed to prove, especially to people who had already decided who I was. The less attention I received from my family, the more freedom I felt. And honestly, I liked it that way. Until the day everything changed. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing executive hiring reports when my assistant knocked on my office door. Got a minute? Sure. She handed me a file. Late application for the Director of Business Development position. I opened it casually. Then froze. The name at the top of the resume made me blink. Ryan Carter. My brother. I stared at the page. Then looked again. Same name. Same address. Same phone number. Definitely Ryan. For several seconds, I simply sat there, trying to process what I was seeing. My brother had applied for a senior leadership role at my company. The company he didn't know I owned. The company he was desperate to join. And he had absolutely no idea. I slowly leaned back in my chair. A smile formed despite myself. Not because I planned to embarrass him. Not because I wanted revenge. But because life has a strange sense of humor. For years Ryan had laughed at my rusty truck. For years he assumed he was the successful brother. Now he was about to walk into a building where my name sat on every executive document. And he had no clue. The interview was scheduled for Friday. 3 days away. Those 3 days would change everything. 3 days. That was all the time between the moment I saw Ryan's application and the moment he would walk into my company thinking he was about to impress strangers. For anyone else, it would have been just another executive interview. For me, it felt like life had quietly placed a mirror in front of my entire childhood. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Ryan. Not even my closest friends outside the company. Inside the company, only my assistant knew he was my brother. I made one thing very clear to her. Do not give him special treatment. She nodded. Understood. And do not tell the hiring committee he's related to me. Of course, if he earns the position, he earns it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. That was the rule. And I meant it. Because despite everything Ryan had done, I didn't want to destroy him. I didn't want revenge. At least, that's what I told myself. But I'd be lying if I said part of me wasn't waiting to see his face when he found out. That Wednesday night, my mother called. I was in my garage, working under the hood of my truck. The same rusty old truck Ryan had mocked for years. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Mom, I wiped my hands with an old rag and answered. Hey, Mom, Ethan, are you busy? I'm working on the truck. She sighed. That familiar sigh. The one that always sounded like disappointment wearing perfume. Still that truck? Yes, Ethan, honey, you're not 20 anymore. At some point, appearances matter. I looked at the dented hood, the faded paint, the rust creeping along the wheel well. Runs fine. That's not the point. It never was with her. Then her voice brightened. Anyway, I called because Ryan has a very important interview this Friday. I heard. You heard? He mentioned looking for work recently. That was a lie, but a small one. Oh. Well. This one is different. It's a major company. Very successful. Very modern. The kind of place that could finally recognize his potential. His potential. That word followed Ryan like a protective shield. When he failed a class, he had potential. When he quit a job, he had potential. When he borrowed money and never paid it back, he had potential. When I succeeded, I had simply done okay. That's good, I said. Mom lowered her voice. I know you work in engineering and business circles. Maybe you know someone there? My hand froze on the rag. What company? North Star Industrial Systems. I stared at the truck. My company. The company I had built from nothing. The company she had never asked about. What makes you think I know someone there? Well, you do something with industrial software, don't you? Something. Years of 18-hour days. 100 employees. Major contracts. Board meetings. Investor calls. National expansion. Something. I might know a few people. Oh. Ethan. That would be wonderful. If you could just put in a good word for your brother. I didn't answer immediately. There was a version of me, younger and angrier, who would have said something cruel. A version who would have enjoyed revealing the truth right then. But the older version of me had learned patience. Mom, do you think Ryan is qualified? Of course he is. What makes you say that? He's a natural leader. Based on what? She paused. Ethan. Don't be difficult. There it was. Questions were difficult. Accountability was difficult. Reality was difficult. But funding Ryan's failures? That was family. I can't interfere with hiring. You don't have to interfere. Just help. That's the same thing. Her tone cooled. You've always been so hard on him. I laughed once. Quietly. Me? Yes. You. Ryan has had setbacks, but he's trying. You could be more supportive. I looked around my garage. At the tools I bought myself. The truck I fixed myself. The life I built myself. And suddenly I felt very tired. Mom. I have to go. Ethan, good night. I hung up. For several minutes, I stood in silence. Then I went back to tightening a bolt, because work had always made more sense to me than family. The next evening was my father's birthday dinner. I almost skipped it. I should have. But some habits are hard to break. No matter how successful you become, part of you still walks into your parents' house hoping maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they'll ask how you're doing. Maybe this time they'll notice. Maybe this time you'll finally feel like a son instead of an afterthought. I drove my rusty truck to their house. Ryan's black luxury SUV was already parked in the driveway. It was newer than mine. Cleaner than mine. And according to his credit reports, almost repossessed. I knew that because his resume package had included authorization for background screening. His financial life was a disaster. But outside, he looked successful. That was Ryan's gift. He could dress a sinking ship like a yacht. When I walked in, everyone was already gathered around him. Mom, Dad, our Aunt Linda, 2 cousins, a few family friends. Ryan stood near the fireplace holding a drink, telling a story about his upcoming interview. They're looking for someone with executive presence, he said. I think that's what most companies are missing. People who can inspire teams. Dad nodded proudly. That's Ryan. Always had leadership in his blood. I stood in the doorway for a moment. Nobody noticed me. Then Aunt Linda glanced over. Oh, Ethan's here. Mom turned. Hi, honey, food's in the kitchen. No hug. No smile. Just food's in the kitchen. Ryan looked past me through the front window. Then grinned. Oh, thank God. The tetanus truck made it. Laughter. Immediate. Automatic. Dad chuckled. That thing still running? Better than some people's finances, I almost said. But I didn't. I just smiled. Still running. Ryan stepped closer, enjoying his audience. You know, Ethan, if this interview goes well, maybe I'll help you upgrade. Nothing crazy. Maybe something from this century. More laughter. Mom touched his arm. Be nice. But she was smiling. That smile hurt more than the joke. Because it told me she thought I was the punchline too. Ryan continued. Seriously though, when I become director at North Star, I'll probably need a good image. Company events, clients, investors. You wouldn't understand. I looked at him. Wouldn't I? He laughed. Come on, little brother. You're smart with machines, sure, but executive rooms are different. You need presence. Presence. Yeah. Confidence. Style. People skills. He lowered his voice just enough to sound like advice, but loud enough for everyone to hear. You can't walk into serious business circles smelling like motor oil. Dad laughed again. Something inside me went still. Not angry, not embarrassed. Still. For years, I had imagined that one day I would snap. That I would finally yell. Finally expose everyone. Finally throw success in their faces. But standing there, watching them laugh at the same tired joke, I realized something. They weren't laughing because the joke was funny. They were laughing because they needed me to stay small. If I became successful in their eyes, the whole family story would collapse. Ryan wouldn't be the golden child. Mom and Dad wouldn't be wise parents. And all those years of dismissing me would become something uglier. So they kept laughing. It was easier. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Ryan dominated the conversation. His interview. His plans. His future. His confidence. His network. My father toasted him before dessert. To Ryan. This Friday could be the beginning of everything we've always known you were capable of. Glasses lifted. I lifted mine too. Not because I agreed. Because I was finally ready to stop caring. Then Mom turned to me. Ethan, maybe you can give Ryan some advice about technical industries. Ryan smirked. No offense, Mom, but I'm interviewing for leadership, not maintenance. The table laughed again. I placed my glass down. Slowly, then I looked at Ryan. Good luck Friday. He smiled like a king accepting tribute. Thanks. I'll try not to forget the little people when I'm at the top. I nodded. I hope you remember that sentence. He didn't understand. Not yet. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I got to the office at 6:30. The city was just waking up. Sunlight reflected off the glass exterior of North Star's headquarters. The building still felt unreal sometimes. 15 floors. A lobby with polished stone floors. A research wing. 2 engineering labs. 300 employees across multiple states. My name wasn't on the building because I didn't believe in vanity. But my fingerprints were everywhere. Every system, every product, every risk, every sleepless night. This company was the proof of a life nobody in my family had bothered to see. At 8:50, I stood in my office watching the lobby security feed. Candidates began arriving. Sharp suits, leather folders, nervous smiles. Then Ryan walked through the revolving doors. He looked confident. Too confident. He wore a navy suit, polished shoes, and the watch my parents had helped him finance 2 years earlier. He approached the reception desk like he owned the room. Classic Ryan. I watched him smile at Jessica, our receptionist. She smiled back professionally. He leaned slightly on the counter, probably making some charming comment. I could almost hear it. Then he sat in the waiting area, crossed one leg over the other, checked his phone, adjusted his cufflinks. A man performing success. The first interview round began at 9:15. He met with HR, then department leadership, then 2 senior managers. I stayed out of it, completely. By 11:30, the feedback started arriving. Candidate, Ryan Carter. Strengths: confident communicator, polished presentation, energetic. Concerns: vague answers, limited measurable achievements, inflated leadership claims, weak operational understanding. Another note: struggled to explain revenue growth strategy listed on resume. Another: could not provide specific examples of managing cross-functional teams. Another: strong personality, but substance does not match senior level role. I read every word. None surprised me. Ryan had built his whole life on being liked. But charm only carries you until someone asks for details. At 12:15, my assistant entered. The committee recommends not moving him forward. Who are the top candidates? She handed me the list. 3 strong names. All more qualified. All more experienced. All better suited. Do you want us to end his process now? I looked at Ryan through the glass wall overlooking the lobby. He was drinking coffee, smiling at another candidate. Still unaware. No, I said. Send him to the final executive conversation. My assistant hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. Do you want the committee present? No. Just me. She nodded. At 2:00, Ryan was escorted to the executive floor. I waited in the conference room. Not my office. The main executive conference room. Glass walls. Long table. City skyline behind me, company logo mounted on the wall. I sat at the head of the table with his file closed in front of me. The door opened. Ryan walked in. His smile appeared first, then vanished. Completely. He stopped so suddenly my assistant almost bumped into him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He stared at me. Then at the logo. Then at the chair. Then back at me. Ethan? Hello. Ryan? What are you doing here? I gestured to the chair across from me. Please sit. He didn't. His eyes moved around the room, searching for an explanation that made sense. You work here? Yes. Since when? A while. He gave a short, nervous laugh. No. I mean, why are you in this room? I folded my hands. Because this is my room. His face changed. Slowly. First confusion. Then disbelief. Then something close to fear. What does that mean? It means I'm conducting your final interview. He looked at the nameplate in front of me. Ethan Carter, Chief Executive Officer. The silence that followed was one of the loudest things I had ever heard. Ryan's mouth opened slightly. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Every joke, every insult, every assumption, every time he had laughed at my truck. All of it arrived in that room at once. You're the CEO? Yes. Of North Star? Yes. His voice dropped. You own this company? Majority owner and founder. He gripped the back of the chair. No. I didn't respond. He looked almost angry now, as if my success was an insult. No. That's not possible. Why? He stared at me. Because you drive that truck. I almost smiled. There it was. The entire tragedy of Ryan's worldview in one sentence. You drive that truck. As if wealth had a uniform. As if success had to be loud. As if value disappeared under rust. Sit down, Ryan. This time he sat. Slowly, his face was pale. His confidence had drained out of him like water from a cracked glass. For the first time in my life, my older brother looked smaller than me. Not physically. Something deeper. I opened the folder. We'll keep this professional. Ethan, wait, no. We'll keep this professional. He swallowed. Did you know I applied? Yes. Since when? Tuesday. And you didn't tell me? No. Why not? I looked at him. Would it have changed how you prepared? He didn't answer. Or would it have changed what you expected? His jaw tightened. This is messed up. What is? You letting me walk in here without telling me. You applied to a company without knowing who founded it. I couldn't have known. Exactly. That landed. He looked away. I reviewed his resume, his claimed leadership experience, his sales numbers, his management roles, his strategic initiatives. One by one, I asked for details. And one by one, Ryan struggled. At first, he tried charm. Then confidence. Then deflection. Then jokes. None worked, because this wasn't a family dinner. There was no mom to laugh. No dad to rescue him. No audience to impress. Just facts. Finally, I closed the folder. Ryan, the committee does not recommend you for this position. His eyes snapped up. What? You are not qualified for a director-level role here. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. You're serious? Yes. You brought me all the way up here just to humiliate me? No, then what is this? A final interview. Don't do that. Do what? Act like this is normal. I leaned back. It is normal. Candidates are evaluated. Some are selected. Some are not. I'm your brother. There it was. The magic sentence. The emergency key. The phrase people use when they want family to override fairness. I know. Then help me. Why? His expression hardened. Because we're family. I nodded slowly. Family? Yes. The same family that laughed when you mocked me for driving an old truck? His face tightened. I was joking. For 15 years? Come on, the same family where you called me maintenance at Dad's birthday dinner 2 nights ago? He looked down. The same family where Mom called asking me to put in a good word for you, without once asking what I actually do? Ryan said nothing. The same family where Dad toasted your future while ignoring the company I built? His silence was different now. Less defensive. More uncomfortable. I wasn't raising my voice. That made it worse. Anger can be dismissed. Calm truth is harder to escape. Finally, he whispered, you could still help me. I am helping you. He looked up. By rejecting me? By telling you the truth. The truth is I need this job. That sentence changed the room. Because it wasn't arrogant. It wasn't polished. It wasn't Ryan performing. It was Ryan breaking. For the first time that day, I saw my brother as he really was. Not the golden child. Not the charming success story. Not the man who laughed at me. Just a scared person who had run out of tricks. I waited. He rubbed his face with both hands. I'm in trouble. I said nothing. I'm behind on everything. The SUV. The condo. Credit cards. Loans. I made some bad investments. How bad? He gave a bitter laugh. Bad enough that I almost didn't come today because I couldn't afford gas. That stunned me. Not because he was broke. Because he had hidden it so well. My SUV might get repossessed next week, he continued. The condo is underwater. My girlfriend left. Mom and Dad don't know half of it. I believe that. Our parents didn't see Ryan clearly. They saw the version they needed. I'm not asking for charity, he said. But he was. We both knew it. I'm asking for one chance. You've had a lot of chances. His eyes filled with frustration. Not like this. No, Ryan. Exactly like this. He flinched. Mom and Dad saved you every time. Every failure got softened. Every consequence got delayed. And now you're sitting here asking me to do the same thing. He looked angry again. Then ashamed. Then lost. I don't know how to fix it. That was the first honest thing he'd said all day. And because it was honest, I answered honestly. You start by taking a job you're qualified for. He looked at me. What? Not director. Not executive. Something real. Something you can actually do. Here? No. His face fell. I can't hire you here. Why not? Because you would never know whether you earned it. And neither would anyone else. He stared at the table. And because if I hire you out of pity, I become the next person protecting you from reality. That hurt him. I could see it. But pain and cruelty are not always the same thing. Sometimes pain is just truth arriving late. The meeting ended quietly. No shouting, no dramatic exit. Ryan stood up looking 10 years older. At the door, he stopped. Did you enjoy this? I thought about it. Then answered truthfully. Less than I expected. He nodded once. Then left. That night, my phone exploded. First Ryan. Then Mom. Then Dad. Then Mom again. Then Dad again. I ignored all of them. At 9:40, Mom sent a message. How could you do this to your own brother? At 10:05, Dad sent one. We need to talk. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. That word almost made me laugh. Not the years of favoritism. Not the insults. Not the emotional neglect. Me refusing to hand Ryan an executive job was unacceptable. The family meeting happened Sunday. Not because I wanted it. Because for once, I wanted everything said clearly. I drove my rusty truck to my parents' house. Ryan's SUV was not there. That told me a lot. Inside, Mom was sitting at the dining table. Dad stood by the window. Ryan sat near the wall, arms crossed, looking exhausted. Nobody offered coffee. Nobody smiled. Mom started immediately. How could you embarrass your brother like that? I sat down. I didn't embarrass him. You let him walk into your company without warning him. He applied for a job. He got an interview. You should have told us you owned it. I looked at her. Why? She blinked. What do you mean why? Why should I have told you? Because we're your family. I nodded. Do you know what North Star does? She hesitated. Industrial software. That's vague. Do you know what kind? Silence. I turned to Dad. Do you know when I founded it? He looked away. Do you know how many employees we have? Nothing. Do you know what my role was before CEO? Still nothing. I turned back to Mom. You want the benefits of being close to me without ever being curious about me. Her face tightened. That's not fair. No. Mom. That's exactly fair. Ryan looked down. Dad finally spoke. We are proud of you. I almost laughed. When did you become proud of me? Friday afternoon? His jaw clenched. Watch your tone. No. The room went still. I had never said that to my father before. Not like that. No, I repeated. I'm done watching my tone so everyone else can avoid watching their behavior. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But I knew those tears. They had protected Ryan for years. This time, I didn't soften. Do you remember my science trophy when I was 12? Mom frowned. What? Of course you don't. I continued. I won first place in the state. You said, that's nice. Then you went back to helping Ryan with football. Ryan looked up. I kept going. Do you remember buying him a Mustang at 16? Dad shifted. That was different. When I turned 16, you gave me a toolbox. That toolbox helped you. Yes. It did. But not because you believed in me. Because you didn't think I deserved more. Dad had no answer. Do you remember my college graduation? Mom wiped her eyes. You know I had a headache. You missed it. Dad missed half of it because Ryan was moving apartments again. Ryan closed his eyes. Do you remember any of my promotions? Silence. Any awards? Silence. Any milestone? Nothing. I nodded. That's what I thought. Mom whispered, we didn't know. You didn't ask. Those 3 words ended something in the room. You didn't ask. Because they couldn't argue with it. They hadn't asked. Not really. They had assumed. They had laughed. They had dismissed. And now the truth stood in front of them, fully grown, calm and unreachable. Dad sat down slowly. Ryan finally spoke. I didn't know either. I looked at him. No. You didn't. His voice was quiet. I thought you were just getting by. I know. Because of the truck. Because of the truck. He covered his face. For the first time, I saw shame in him. Not embarrassment. Shame. There is a difference. Embarrassment says, I got caught. Shame says, I finally see what I did. Mom reached toward him. Ryan, honey, he pulled away. That shocked everyone. Don't. Mom froze. Ryan looked at her. Don't do that. What? Don't make me the victim again. Her mouth opened. Closed. Ryan turned to me. I was cruel to you. I didn't answer. I thought it was funny because everyone laughed. Dad looked down. Ryan's voice broke. But I knew. I knew sometimes it wasn't funny. I just liked feeling above you. That was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. And it hurt more than the jokes. Because it confirmed what I'd always known. He had seen it. He had chosen it. I don't forgive you yet, I said. He nodded. I know. Mom started crying harder. Dad looked like someone had removed the floor beneath him. But I wasn't there to comfort them. Not anymore. I stood. I'm not hiring Ryan. No one argued. I'm not giving money to fix his debts. Ryan nodded again. And I'm not pretending this family was healthy just because admitting the truth is uncomfortable. Mom whispered. Are you cutting us off? I looked at her. No. Relief flickered across her face. Then I finished. But I'm no longer available to be disrespected. That was the boundary. Simple. Clear. Final. After that Sunday, everything changed. Not all at once. Real change rarely happens like that. At first, Mom sent long emotional messages. Some apologies. Some guilt. Some excuses. I responded only when the message contained accountability. Dad stayed quiet for nearly a month. Ryan disappeared completely. I heard through a cousin that his SUV was repossessed. Then his condo went into foreclosure. Then he moved into a small apartment outside the city. For once, my parents didn't rescue him. Not because they didn't want to. Because he refused. That surprised me. 3 months later, Ryan called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hey, he said. His voice sounded different. Less polished. More human. Hey. I got a job. Good. Warehouse operations. I paused. That was not the kind of job Ryan would have bragged about before. Where? A regional supply company. Night shift supervisor. That's honest work. Yeah. Silence. Then he said, I used to think jobs like this were beneath me. I know. I was wrong. I didn't say anything. He continued, I'm learning. Slowly. It's embarrassing. Learning usually is. He gave a short laugh. Not charming. Not performative. Real. I called because I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not the family meeting version. A real one. I waited. I'm sorry I mocked you. I'm sorry I made you feel small. I'm sorry I used mom and dad's favoritism instead of questioning it. And I'm sorry that when I found out who you were, my first reaction wasn't pride. It was anger. That sentence stayed with me. Because it was true. And because he admitted it without being forced. I appreciate that, I said. I don't expect forgiveness. Good. He laughed softly. Fair. We talked for 20 minutes. Not like brothers who had healed everything. Not like some perfect ending. Just two men speaking honestly for the first time. It was enough for that day. A year passed. North Star expanded into 3 more states. I kept driving the truck. By then, the Rust had become almost legendary at the office. New employees would ask, whose truck is that? And someone would say, the CEO's. They always thought it was a joke. Then they'd see me get out. I liked that moment. Not because it shocked people. But because it reminded me of something important. Assumptions reveal the person making them. Not the person being judged. That Christmas, Mom invited me to dinner. For the first time, the invitation was simple. No guilt. No pressure. Just, we'd love to see you if you're comfortable coming. So I went. I parked the truck in the driveway. Ryan's car was already there. Not an SUV, a used sedan. Clean, practical, paid for, in cash, as he proudly told me later. When I walked in, the house felt different. Quieter. Less like a stage built around Ryan. More like a home trying to remember how to be one. Mom hugged me carefully, like she wasn't sure she still had the right. Dad shook my hand, then pulled me into a stiff hug. It was awkward. But real. Ryan walked over. He looked healthier. Less expensive. More grounded. Truck still alive? I looked at him. For half a second, the old tension returned. Then he raised both hands. That was not a joke. I'm honestly impressed. I laughed. A real laugh. Still runs better than half the new ones. I believe it. Dinner was different too. Mom asked me about North Star. Not vaguely, really asked. How it started. What problems we solved. What I was proud of. For the first time in my life, my parents listened to me without waiting for Ryan to become the center again. Dad asked about the truck. I told him about the engine rebuild. The frame restoration. The custom parts I'd fabricated myself. He listened quietly. Then said, I should have paid more attention. The table went silent. I looked at him. He cleared his throat. When you were younger, I should have paid more attention. It wasn't a perfect apology. But from my father, it was a mountain moving 1 inch. Mom cried later in the kitchen. This time, not to manipulate. Just because she finally understood. I'm sorry, she said, I missed so much of your life. I looked at her. Yes. You did. She nodded through tears. I don't know how to fix that. You don't fix it with one apology. I know. You fix it by showing up differently now. She wiped her face. I want to try. That was all I needed. Not perfection. Effort. After dinner, Ryan and I stood outside by the truck. Cold air. Quiet street. Christmas lights reflecting in the rusty paint. He leaned against the fence. You know what the worst part was? What? The day I walked into your conference room. I smiled slightly. That was pretty bad. No. The worst part wasn't finding out you were CEO. He looked at the truck. It was realizing you had become successful without needing me to know. I didn't answer. That messed me up. Why? Because everything I did was for people to see. The car. The suit. The watch. The job titles. All of it. He shook his head. You had the real thing. I had the costume. For once, I felt no desire to correct him. He was right. I don't want to be that guy anymore, he said. Then don't be. He nodded. I'm trying. I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. Not as the golden child. Not as the villain in my story. Just as a flawed man finally meeting himself. Maybe that was the closest thing to justice life gives us. Not revenge. Not humiliation. But growth. Slow. Painful. Earned. Before I left, Dad walked me to the driveway. He looked at the truck for a long moment. Then said, you built something good. I thought he meant the truck. Then he looked at me. I mean your life. For years, I had imagined hearing words like that. I thought they would heal everything. They didn't. But they mattered. Sometimes healing doesn't erase the past. Sometimes it simply gives the future a chance to be different. I got into the truck. The engine turned over with that familiar rough growl. Ryan smiled from the porch. Mom waved. Dad stood with his hands in his pockets. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw all of them watching, not laughing, not judging. Watching, seeing me, maybe for the first time. And as I drove home through the quiet streets, I realized I didn't need them to understand everything. I didn't need Ryan to feel ashamed forever. I didn't need my parents to rewrite history. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I had spent years building a life strong enough to stand without their approval. That was the real victory. My brother laughed at my rusty truck for years. He thought rust meant failure. He thought silence meant weakness. He thought humility meant poverty. Then one day he walked into the company he was begging to join and discovered the man behind the wheel was the CEO. But the truth is, I had already won long before that day. I won the first time I stopped begging to be seen. I won the first time I chose peace over proving myself. I won every night I worked in silence while they laughed in comfort. And I won when I finally understood that value doesn't need permission to exist. Some people will judge your life by the vehicle in your driveway. Let them. Some people will mistake your quietness for failure. Let them. Some people will only respect you when they discover what you own. Let them. Because the people who truly matter won't need a title on your door or a price tag on your car to recognize your worth. And the people who do? They were never qualified to measure it in the first place.